Testimony ended this week in a federal lawsuit that claims Ohio's Republican-drawn congressional districts resulted in unconstitutional gerrymandering, that is, drawing the lines to favor one party over another. A ruling is likely within a matter of weeks. Republicans have claimed that the current map with 12 Republican and 4 Democratic seats had bipartisan support. Democrats have disagreed. Secretary of State Frank LaRose has said the plaintiffs should wait for voter-approved Issue 1 to play out with new rules in 2021. So, Jim Siegel, what's the point of a lawsuit when a redraw using the new voter-approved process is just another year off?
Well, I think the main goal is to reset the baseline. Right now, the baseline is the current map, and the concern among those who want to see a more fair map, a map that is much less partisan, is that majority Republicans will simply look at that map, make a few changes, make it slightly better, and say, well, here you go, this is a better map. And the concern is that that still will be a pretty partisan, pretty gerrymandered map. I think they believe that if they get the courts to force a redraw, then they can start off from a map that is potentially fairer in terms of whether there's districts out there that aren't drawn, purely to make sure that 12 and 4 are who win every time, and that it could ultimately result in a better process to redraw the districts starting in 2021.
Whichever way it goes is an appeal probable. Shannon Jones?
I mean, look, I don't know if they'll appeal it or not, but it seems to me that the voter-approved process is right around the corner. A new census is right around the corner. And, we're going to see that play out at a very specific date without any of the litigation. So, I mean, perhaps it's a distinction without a difference.
I think it's interesting, this whole gerrymandering. The voter-approved process is supposed to bring more bipartisanship to it, but I'm not convinced that it's really going to, erase the hyper-partisanship that goes along with this process. And I think that the Republicans will still have the upper hand in the process.
Yeah, Shirley DeTorres.
I totally agree. I think that certainly one person, one vote, and a democracy is what we all want. If we don't believe, and I think the ACLU and the League of Women Voters is very clear, they don't believe the voters' voices are being heard in the way the maps are drawn today, why would we procrastinate and wait for the census when people's voices aren't heard today? So, I agree with the lawsuit that, yes, we have a gerrymandered map today. The sooner we get that addressed, the better for everyone, and more people will participate when they believe that their vote counts.
Drawing these maps, though, takes months, doesn't it, Jim Siegel?
Well, it just depends on what you're trying to do. You could draw one of these maps in a week or two, and you could use certain formulas, and they could spit you out a map that would be perfectly reasonable. But the problem is that when you start taking into all the factors of, well, who's the current congressman? Who wants to be congressman next? How Republican is this district? How Democratic? Where are people moving to in the district or in the state? And once you start factoring in all the politics, that's what causes it to take a while.
And Laura Bishop, you're saying this. You're not sure that with the hyperpartisanship at hand now that it'll make any difference. How long do you think it would be, even if, let's say, we went with Issue 1 and started that process? How long would it be before we would see it manifest in any meaningful way?
Well,
any change?
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while, several years, before we actually see, a shifting and changing of the maps to be more balanced. In terms of, Ohio is still a fairly purple balanced state, but a 12-4 representation in Congress doesn't really show that. And I just think it's going to take a long time for this new process to kind of take a foothold.
And what about this claim by the Republicans that there was bipartisan input on this map?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, they said that, well, the Democrats, they consulted with them.
There were some behind closed doors meetings. And when people are interested in protecting their own congressional district, and certainly Congress was weighing in on this, and then you have some, I know that they've highlighted the NAACP. There was a chapter person that stepped forward to say that this congressional map was okay. And so there are always going to be some people that agree, but are they speaking for the Democrats as a whole? Absolutely not.
Well, the process is in and of itself, it's a political process.
Right.
So there's not going to be any methodology that's going to remove politics from it. I mean, in the last redistricting, we lost one Republican and one Democrat member of Congress. And so, that should be something that we look at as well. And so, shouldn't the state consider the longevity of the people who've been in Congress, given that they have a very specific tenure system, and that in order to bring more influence back on behalf of the state, you need to consider those things. I mean, so I'm not necessarily for this plan or that plan or another plan. I just think it's foolhardy to expect any plan is going to be void of politics.
Well, that's absolutely true. But there is a big gap between void of politics and I think the map we have now. I mean, I think that's what a lot of the people who want change would argue, is that there's a lot of room there to make this map more fair. For example, Franklin County does not need to be broken up into 3 districts. The only reason it's broken up into 3 districts is so that we can make 2 Republican districts surrounded by Joyce Beatty's very, very Democratic seat. And that helps the Republicans because they were able to concentrate all those Democratic voters into Joyce Beatty's seat. Frankly, I look at my own, where I live out there in Gahanna. I mean, there's literally like a line drawn to kind of circle my neighborhood on the very east side of the district. And it's surrounded by otherwise by what's now Troy Balderson's seat. But yeah, I mean, those are the kind of decisions that are made. And so yeah, there is some, I think there is a way to do this that's more fair, but it doesn't necessarily, certainly doesn't mean you're going to get an 8-8 map or anything of that, or whatever the numbers are next time. Republicans are very likely to still control a majority of the seats.